Hi, I'm Juliet Kemp. I'm an author of fantasy and science fiction. I was due to be reading from my new book at Super Relaxed Fantasy Club in April, and obviously that's now not happening. And I was due to be launching it at EasterCon, which is also now not happening. So Phil has very kindly asked me to do a little bit of a video, and I will do a reading. Before I do that, I'm going to show you my view, which is probably the best bit of where I work. That's the Thames. I will also show you a couple of things from around our house. So my kid has been making great use of the indoor climbing frame, and the dog has been perfecting the yoga pose sideways dog, which, as you can see, she is very good at. We're very fortunate to have a little garden out back, which is nice and sunny. There's the kids' swing, and that's the kale, which I planted about 18 months ago and is now flowering like mad. The bees are very enthusiastic about it. Up here are the little first shoots of the grapevine, which will hopefully in about September become real actual grapes. And over here is the fig tree, which has a few tiny little figs already, which is brilliant. So my first book in my Marek series was called The Deep and Shining Dark, and that came out. There it is. That came out in 2018, and the new one is called Shadow and Storm, and that is out now in e-form and also in paper form. It's from Elsewhen Press, and I believe you can still order directly from them or from other online booksellers. So I'm going to read a little bit from the first chapter. Tate stared down the side of the mountain and shivered. They really didn't like heights, which made joining an expedition through a mountain a bloody stupid idea, except that none of the other options had been any better. It was cold, and Tate's feet had been wet inside their aging boots for days now. In an ideal world, they'd have brought good quality new boots, maybe with sheepskin lining, before they started out on this trip. In an ideal world, they wouldn't have been quite in the hurry that they had been. In an ideal world, they would never have decided to train as a sorcerer, and they would still be living happily in Amerton, somewhere warm, with a fire and a nice stack of books to read in front of it. Below them, here in this very non-ideal world, the rest of the expedition was strung out along the absurdly narrow path that wound its way sinuously down the mountainside, snaking between boulders and stunted gnarled mountain trees. Captain Anna had directed Tate to keep to the rear, on the grounds both that Tate was slower than anyone else, and that Tate's job was to be prepared to perform sorcery at a moment's notice should something require it, which Tate strenuously hoped it would not. Bracken, just behind Tate's shoulder, made a huffing noise indicative of his wish for Tate to get a bloody move on. Bracken's job was to protect Tate should they need to do sorcery, and also to get Tate down the mountainside safely without freezing up at any point along the terrifying path. Bracken quite clearly thought that Tate should have mentioned a fear of heights when persuading Captain Anna to take them on for the journey. Captain Anna most likely thought the same, even if she hadn't said it. Though Bracken had become less visibly irritated after the expedition was attacked by a dragon bear, only a small one, but still big enough to have ripped them all in pieces, and Tate had opened a vein and translocated it straight across the ravine to roar at them, baffled from the other side. Dragon bears didn't worry Tate. Well, that wasn't wholly true. Tate had no desire to be ripped to pieces either, but the dragon bear in itself had not been Tate's main concern right then. Tate's main concern had been not attracting spirit attention that they really, really didn't want. Which was why they'd risk bleeding out rather than do what any other Terran sorcerer would have done and summon a spirit. It was well worth the cost of a pint or so of blood and several stitches afterwards, courtesy of the expedition medic, not to become visible on the spirit plane. Happily, everyone else on the expedition was from Marek and knew sod all about Terran sorcery, so no one asked awkward questions. And once Tate got down this damn mountain and into the swamps at its foot, they would be nearly at Marek, and once they got to Marek, they would be able to avoid spirit attention altogether. Or that was the theory. Maybe they could even work out how to become a sorcerer again safely. It was a thought warming enough to get them moving down the absurd goat track of the path. About time, Bracken muttered under his breath, stomping down behind Tate. Bracken was shorter than Tate, but about twice Tate's weight, which should surely have meant he would find the narrow paths harder going, but apparently it didn't work that way. Bracken seemed to have endless endurance and no fear at all. And he carried a significantly heavier pack too. containing a share of the money and trading goods that the expedition was bringing back for its sponsor, House Ferreno, one of Marek's ruling 13 houses. Captain Anna seemed to think quite highly of House Ferreno, and in particular of whoever had organised this expedition. Personally, Tate couldn't give a shit about Marek politics. What Tate cared about was that Marek only had the one spirit and didn't let any others in. That meant Tate would be safe. Hopefully. How much longer? Tate asked Bracken, as the path widened out enough for them to walk side by side. A certain amount of shouting was drifting up from below them. Tate looked down to see the rest of the expedition gathered by the side of a stream, well, a waterfall, that cut across the path. It looked like they were trying to bridge it. Great! Crossing a slippery tree trunk across a raging torrent was exactly what this day needed. Till camp. Think Captain wanted to get right out of the mountains, Bracken said. He nodded downhill. See them trees down there? Reckon that'll be where we camp tonight. As far as Tate could see, the land kept on going downhill well beyond the forested bit that Bracken indicated. They said as much. Nah, but that's not mountains, right? That's just hills. Right, Tate said doubtfully, peering downhill again, then wishing they hadn't. Much easier going, Bracken said, obviously trying to sound reassuring. A shower of stones slid out under Tate's foot and bounced down the rocky mountainside, and they flailed before Bracken grabbed their shoulder and steadied them. Proper paths, not stony like this, Bracken added, as Tate regained their balance and tried to pretend it hadn't happened. Well, Tate said, good. And then, how long after that to Marek? Bracken made a thoughtful noise in the back of his throat. Well now, camp tonight. Another day to the river, quicker in the hills. Maybe a day and a half on the boat through the delta, nice and easy, with the current, no trouble at all. So, not tomorrow, nor yet the next day, but midday of the day after should be. He nodded, happy with his assessment. And I'll be glad enough to get home, and with a nice healthy lump of cash for our efforts too. He grinned cheerfully at Tate and clapped them on the back. And not eaten by dragon bears either, eh? Tate did their best to grin back at him. On the path below, the rest of the expedition had crossed the waterfall, had their packs back on, and were heading onwards down the mountain, leaving a single person by the bridge to wait for Tate and Bracken. 2.5 more days. And then Tate could stop looking over their shoulder. Hopefully. Of course, what they were going to do in Marek was another matter, but Tate could work that out once they were no longer at risk of being pulled apart by an angry demon. For now, the prospect of reaching Marek was enough to get them heading down towards the bridge with a glad heart. Well, gladish. So that's from the start of that book, and as I say, that's Shadow and Storm, and it's out now. So that's all from me. Hope you're all keeping safe, look after yourself, and thanks to Phil for inviting me to the online Super Relaxed Fantasy Club. Cheers.